What is up, everyone? I'm Rusty, your local laboratory maniac. This is Lamman EDH, where we talk about EDH deck building and commander cards. Now, this video is going to have a little theme. I have so many decks I have in my phone. If you saw, it's like over like 200 decks I want to talk about. Some I own, some I don't. So I would like to pick a theme. This one is about decks I own, and then the theme kind of is these decks are a lot better than I thought they were going to be. So I am a pretty casual player. I love making jank decks and then doing the thing my deck does. And sometimes these decks can be a little too powerful and I have to tone them down just a bit. Here's perfect examples. Now, if you play in a very casual group, I think these would still work for you. But if you play in a more competitive group, like let's say a high 3, low 4 in terms of the brackets, I think these decks will do perfect, and you could probably even make them better if you add more fast mana or whatever you want to do. You're the planeswalker, you choose how to build the decks. I'm literally just here to give you some ideas of what to play, and then you take it from there. Now, that's not to say I don't have deck lists. I do have deck lists down below if you want them. Okay, our first commander is Be the Top deck. Not to be confused with being a top. That's something very different, guys. Don't be going there. Okay. So we got Yasmin Khan in the 13th Doctor as the commanders. You can use other commanders if you want. I just like this color combination for this deck. Now, the 13th Doctor is a one generic, one green, one blue legendary creature, Time Lord Doctor. It has the paradox ability that says whenever you cast a spell from anywhere other than your hand, put a +1/+1 counter on target creature. And then it says at the beginning of your end step, untap each creature you control with a counter on it, and it's a 2/2. Now, that is basically the main commander we're focusing on. But these doctors have companions, so we are using Yasmin Khan. Yasmin Khan is a 3 generic, 1 red legendary creature, human detective. You can tap it, exile the top card of your library until the end of your next end step. You may play that card, and then as Doctor's Companion. Now, that obviously works with Paradox casting from Exile, but that's not going to be the focus of our deck. The focus of our deck is we're going to play a lot of cards that say we can play from the top card of our library. Now, before we get more into the deck, here's just a quick focus spotlight. I want to ask you a question. Is playing from the top of the deck the equivalent to drawing or card advantage to you? I'd say yes. I've had conversations with other Magic players. They don't think of it like that. But if you do think of it like that, your deck needs drawing cards anyway. So you can just replace all your drawing cards with top deck cards, and bing, bada, boom, you have an built in theme right there. Two cards that got me started down this rabbit hole because I made this deck essentially from scratch. I actually chose the commanders last. Basically, I just wanted a deck that plays from the top of the library and can manipulate it. So, Future Sight and Magus of the Future is what started the rabbit hole for me. So, basically, they both have you play with the top card of your library revealed. And then they both say you may play the top card of your library, whether it's a land, whether it's a non land, you can still play it. Obviously, Magus of the Future is a creature. It's a 2/3. Back when I was a teenage laboratory maniac, I thought Oracle Modiah was one of the best cards out there. I cracked it in a pack. I was obsessed with it. I kind of have Elvis Chorus, which is also in the deck, kind of side by side, just to compare the two and the power creep. Now, Oracle Modiah is a 3 generic, 1 green elf shaman. You may play an additional land on each of your turns, play with the top card of your library revealed, and you may play the top card of your library if it's a land, and it's a 2/2. Now, one thing to note is a lot of these cards that play from the top of your library have stipulations. Future Sight, Magus of the Future, and I think two others, one with the multiverse and reality chip, I don't think have stipulations on what you can play from the top of your library. But as you see, this also lets you play an additional land. You've all been playing against or with Bola Citadel probably in the past. You hope if you're playing against, your opponent has a land on top. And if you're playing it, you hope you don't have a land. That's because you can only play one land per turn, so it slows you down. If you can play a lot of additional lands, which in this deck there are a bunch, you can churn through the top of your deck like crazy. Also, we're going to work around the stipulations. For example, MDFCs work with both Oracle Moldiah, which wants lands, or Elvish Chorus, which actually wants creatures. It is a 3 generic, 1 green enchantment. You may look at the top card of your library at any time, so you don't even have to reveal it to your opponent while Oracle Maldaya. You do. You may cast creature spells from the top of your library, so it cares about creatures. And then creatures you control have tap, add 1 mana of any color. So it makes your creatures mana dorks. Now, I built this deck so it profits a lot off of these kind of effects because green has a lot of playing creatures from the top of your library. Therefore, a lot of our mana ramp, a lot of our card draw is going to be creature form. So we're going to focus more on playing from the top deck with creatures. We're going to be doing all that just to profit and maximize our value here. Now, Augur of Autumns is essentially the Miley Cyrus of this deck because it's kind of the best of both worlds. It's a 1 generic, 2 green human druid. You may look at the top card of your library at any time. You may play the top card of your library if it's a land. And then, as the Coven ability, as long as you have 3 or more creatures with different power, you may cast creature spells from the top of your library. And it's a 2/3. So it plays lands like Oracle Maldaya, but depending on what creatures you have in play, it can also do the Elven Chorus thing where you can cast creatures. Then you got Fizzlefep, Lost on the Range. He's a newer card. It's a 1 generic, 2 blue, legendary creature, Homunculus, as Ward 2. And then you may look at the top card of your library at any time. The top card of your library has plot. The plot cost is equal to the mana cost, and you may plot non land cards from the top of your library. And it's a 1/1. So plot obviously isn't as good as just casting it. Sometimes it can be better, but sometimes it can be worse. Just depends how you build the deck. I threw this in there because I just love this character. I'll put him in any deck he fits. Now, this next slide has 8 cards on it. There's more. 8 is all I could really fit on one slide. And I'll just go briefly over them from top to bottom. Okay, Eladamri wants you to cast creatures from the top of your library and has other abilities. Case of the Locked Hothouse lets you play an additional land. And then if you solve the case, you can play creatures, enchantments, and lands from the top of your library. Fortune Teller's Talent lets you cast from the top card of your library. If you've cast a spell this turn. One with the multiverse lets you cast something from your top of your library for free. Garruk's Horde does creatures. The reality chip does anything as long as it's equipped to something. Crystal Skull does, I believe, legendary or no, historic. And then the fourth Doctor also does historic and lets you play historic lands. If I say top deck strategy, I bet at least 50% of you automatically think Sensei's Divining Top. It lets you manipulate the top cards of your library, basically. It's a 1 generic artifact. You can pay 1 generic, look at the top 3 cards of your library, then put them back in any order. Then you can tap it, draw the card, and then put Sensei's Divining Top on top of its owner's library. So it's hard to get rid of because you can just tap it and bounce it to the top of your library and draw. And then you can manipulate the top. If there's a land and you've already played your max lands, you can kind of put that to the bottom of the third and then keep going. And then you got Miri's Guile. It's not as good. It's a 1 green enchantment. During your upkeep, you may look at the top 3 cards of your library and put them back in any order. So you don't have to pay anything, but it is an upkeep trigger, so not as good. And there's a few other cards that do something similar to this. As I said, you want a lot of cards that play additional lands. You got Azusa Lost But Seeking, 2 generic, 1 green, legendary creature, human monk. You may play 2 additional lands each of your turns. So that's a really good one. And then you got Dryad of Ilian Grove. It's a 2 generic, 1 green enchantment creature, Nymph Dryad. You may play an additional land on each of your turns. And then lands you control are every basic land type in addition to their other types, and it's a 2/4. Now, I wanted to include a few cards I didn't actually put in the deck because I cut them, but you might like them. Everyone values different cuts, and for this deck, it was really hard to make cuts. But here are 2 cards that help you with having lands on top of your library. You got Dryad Green Seeker. It's a 1 generic, 1 green creature Dryad. You can tap it, look at the top card of your library. If it's a land, you may reveal it and put it into your hand. So it helps you get those lands off the top. And then you got Fadia Seer, if I pronounce that right. It's a 1 generic, 1 green creature, human shaman. You can tap it, draw a card, and reveal it. And if it isn't a land card, discard it. But you're only going to do it when you know there's a land on there, and it's a 1/1. So you can play these cards if you want them. I think they're actually pretty neat. Okay, so playing from the top card of your library is profitable because it's essentially card draw. but there's other ways to profit from it. And here, let me go over some. So you got Flaming Tyrannosaurus. It's a 5 generic, 2 red creature dinosaur. It has Menace and the Paradox ability. Whenever you cast a spell from anywhere other than your hand, Flaming Tyrannosaurus deals 3 damage to any target. Then put a +1/+1 counter on Flaming Tyrannosaurus. And then whenever it dies, it deals damage equal to its power to each opponent. So this can actually be a win con because you're going to be playing so many cards from the top of your library. And remember, your commander also gives +1/+1 counters. So you can make this huge before. However, it is a dice trigger. So hopefully he's not bounced or exiled. Then you got Keeper of Secrets. It's a 5 generic, 1 red creature demon. So it's a mono red demon. That's cool. As first strike and haste. And whenever you cast a spell from anywhere other than your hand, Keeper of Secrets deals damage equal to that spell's mana value to target opponent. And it's a 6/4. Now, this was before the Paradox ability was a thing. This is actually from Warhammer, Keeper of Secrets is. So it's also a win con because we will be doing a lot of top deck casting, and that includes the Paradox ability because it's not from your hand. Doing damage to your opponent is a good way to end the game. So is making a bunch of tokens. You got Lost of the Damned and Araxa, Empress of Mars. Lost of the Dam is a 1 generic, 1 blue, 1 red enchantment. When a land enters the battlefield under your control from anywhere other than your hand, or you cast a spell from anywhere other than your hand, create a 3/3 red spawn creature token. So that's perfect. Then you got Araxa, Empress of Mars. It's a 2 generic, 2 red legendary creature, alien warrior, has trample, battle cry, and paradox. Whenever you cast a spell from anywhere other than your hand, create a 2/2 red alien warrior creature token. It's a 5/4. So you're hopefully be casting a lot of spells and just getting an army of tokens. Some more ways to benefit. You got the 12th Doctor, 3 generic, 1 blue, 1 red legendary creature, Time Lord Doctor. The first spell you cast from anywhere other than your hand, each turn has Demonstrate. Now, if you don't know, Demonstrate, when you cast something, you can demonstrate it, which copies it, but your opponent also will get a copy, and you get to choose the opponent. And if it's a permanent, it comes in as a token. And then whenever you copy a spell, put a +1/+1 counter on the 12th Doctor. There's a lot of +1/+1 counter synergies that are just natural in this deck. It's not even something you have to focus on, although you totally can, because it's another great win con is to boost up your creatures and swing for game. Then you got Sage of the Beyond. It's a 5 generic, 2 blue, spirit giant, has flying. You can foretell it for 4 generic and a blue. And then it says spells you cast from anywhere other than your hand cost 2 colorless less to cast. And it's a 5/5. So it cheats cost on the top card of your library. Here's even more benefit. Am I convincing you yet to do this deck? Because this deck is so much fun. And you could see why it's so powerful. You got power balance and counterbalance. I love these two cards because they're exact opposites. Power Balance is 2 red enchantment. Whenever an opponent casts a spell, you may reveal the top card of your library. Hopefully, it's already revealed. If you do, you may cast that card without paying its mana cost if the two spells have the same CMC. Now, your opponent, this can either be you're just profiting, the top card's not revealed, and you're just working with it and just getting free stuff, or this can stop your opponent from casting things so they don't want you to have it. And then Counterbalance acts similar. It's a 2 blue enchantment. Whenever an opponent plays a spell, you may reveal a top card of your library, and if you do, counter that spell if it has the same CMC of the revealed card. So this frees your opponent from casting things because they know it will get countered for 0 value. Now, here's a combo that I've only got once, but when I got it, it was essentially game over. And this is what kind of made me like think it's super powerful. So you got Seaboard Muse that untaps all your permanents each upkeep, and then something that gives things flash, like Tidal Barracuda that gives things flash, and then a Magus of the Future that lets you play from the top card of your library. So if you have ways to filter the top card of your library, you're essentially just nonstop casting things. It's really very powerful. And of course, we got to talk about the essentials. We got to talk about mana value, removal, protection. So, Incubation Druid and Gyre Sage are both mana dorks that care about +1/+1 counters. And remember, our commander will be giving things +1/+1 counters when we cast things from the top of our library. So these guys will get big. And then if Gyre Sage gets really, really, really big, actually adds a green for each +1/+1 counter on it. Then for removal, Wave of Goodbye is a great one. It's a 2 generic, 2 blue sorcery. Return each creature without a +1/+1 counter on it to its owner's hand. Hopefully, all of our cards will have that. And one of my favorite cards from the Fallout set is Mutational Advantage. It's a 1 generic, 1 green, 1 blue instant. Permanents you control with counters on them gain hexproof and indestructible until the end of turn. Prevent all damage that will be dealt to those permanents this turn. Proliferate. So it protects your board and it also proliferates. Perfect for this. And if it says permanents you control, so if you're making a deck with counters on artifacts, enchantments, planeswalkers, Mutational Advantage is the card for you. For this deck, and let me know if this has happened to you down in the comments. I made this deck because I just want to do top deck shenanigans, right? And I actually kind of forgot to put in game enders, essentially. I would, if I won the game, it'd be through just kind of like dealing damage with my +1/+1 countered creatures. But then I was like, okay, to put this deck kind of over the top, no pun intended, I put stuff like Uncivil Unrest in here. It's a 4 generic, 1 red enchantment. Non token creatures you control have Riot. Then, if a creature you control with a +1/+1 counter would deal damage to a permanent or a player, it deals double that damage instead. So it doubles all my creatures' damage, which is great. And then stuff like Passionate Archaeologist is something you can throw in here, but it does damage if you cast a spell from exile, which Yasmin will do. I find that to get rid of the top card of your library, let's say you have a land and you've already played your max lands, Yasmin can exile that land off the top so you can essentially get the card under it. So that's another great reason to have that as the commander. And Passionate Archaeologist does work with the commander. And remember, you have 2 commanders. So if you have this out and you play something from exile with like 3 CMC and you have both your commanders out, it'll do 3 damage twice. So it kind of is 2 for 1. But that's essentially the deck. Play from the top card of your library and then profit in some way. You can do a +1/+1 counter theme. You could do a focus on damage theme. You could put damage doublers in here to make stuff like Passionate Archaeologist more profitable. And you could just keep going with it. It's so much fun. There's so many ways you can go. And I just love it. Now, this next deck I've had for a while. I think Battle Bond came out in like 2017, 2018, somewhere in there. And as soon as I saw these guys, I had to do them. I love the partner with ability. I actually have a whole deck themed around partner with if you want to check it out on a previous video. But Gorm the Great and Virtus the Veiled are the commanders. And if you don't know, Gorm and Virtus are just Germ and Virus, just changed a little. And I love this because it's kind of a Deathtouch theme, but you're trying to Deathtouch an opponent, not other creatures. The commander you probably want to focus heavily on is Virtus, not Gorm, but both are useful. So you got Virtus the Veiled. It's a 2 generic, 1 black legendary creature, Azra Assassin. It partners with Gorm, has Death Touch. When it deals combat damage to a player, that player loses half their life rounded up. And it's a 1/1. Then you got Gorm the Great. It's a 3 generic, 1 green legendary creature, giant warrior, as vigilance. And when it must be blocked, F able, and Gorm must be blocked by 2 or more creatures F able. And it's a 2/7. So even if they block it, they might not kill it. Now, obviously, we're going to focus heavily on making our opponents lose half their life. And if you know me, you know I'm going heavy on the lose half life thing. I'm going to fit as many your opponent loses half their lives in here as possible. Now, a quick lore spotlight. You know I love my lore. Now, Virtus and Gorm were fighters in the arena and they were known as bullies. They fought Will and Rowan, the planeswalkers, but they eventually lost. What was their motivation to fight in the arena? Did they just like beating the crap out of people? Who knows? Come on, Wizards, bring them back, make them just maybe even side villains. I would love to see them again. Okay, so like I said, we're going to be focusing on our opponent losing half their life. However, if we're going to play a deck around death touching our opponents, you know we're playing Phage the Untouchable. It's a 3 generic, 4 black legendary creature minion. If it comes into play and you didn't play it from your hand, you lose the game. So watch out for that. If someone living deaths while this is in your graveyard, you are screwed. And then when it deals combat damage to a creature, destroy that creature, it can't be regenerated. So it's super death touch. And when it deals damage to a player, that player loses the game. And four sword is similar. It's a one black artifact equipment. Equipped creature gets plus 2/+0 and has death touch. You can pay 5 generic, 3 black until the end of turn. The Vorpal Sword gains. When a equipped creature deals combat damage to a player, that player loses the game and you quit for 2 black. So it makes something basically Phage the Untouchable. So both these cards are perfect for this deck. Now, if you want to build a deck like this, you can do it one of two ways. The way I did it was I just threw in every single Half Life thing I can. But you can also just focus on your commander. But that does have a downside. If you only focus on taking your commander and getting it to your opponent through and then making them lose half their life that way, your opponent will try to remove it. You can play a lot of protection, but you're not always going to be able to protect it. You're not always going to be able to get through to your opponent's life. So having the redundancy is really good. And that's why I went heavy on the redundancy in this deck, but you don't have to do it that way. Now, here's 8 cards that have life. I have 5 on the next slide. I'm just going to go over them briefly. Pause the video if you want to look up any specifically. So here we go. We got Peer into the Abyss. They draw half their library and lose half their life. You can also target yourself. Blood Tribute, if you cast it with a kicker, which is tapping a vampire, they lose half their life and then you gain half their life. You got Fraying Omnipotence. They lose half their life, discard half the cards, and sacrifice half the creatures. And this applies to everyone. So each player does this. Then you got Athalia, Viper Whisperer. It halves life if you do damage with a Gorgon or Snake. You got Shard of the Nightbringer. It has a cast trigger that makes someone lose half their life. Then you got Skull Storm. Target opponent, or sorry, each opponent sacrifices a creature and then lose half their life. And then it has basically Storm for each time you cast your commander, which remember, we have 2. You got Quintus Spike. It's an equipment that gives death touch and makes someone lose half their life if they'll deal damage. Then you got Unstoppable Slasher that makes someone lose half their life. Here's 5 more. Have I convinced you yet? You got Ebon Blade Reaper. It has a morph ability, so you can like attack with a morph creature and they not know what it is, and then you flip it over when they declare no blockers that make them lose half their life. You got Scythe Claw. It's a living weapon equipment that makes someone lose their half the life when they deal damage. You got Raving Dead. It can only attack at random opponent, but it makes them lose half their life and has death touch. And then you got Grievous Wound. It's an enchantment curse. Oh wait, no, it's not a curse. It's just an aura enchant player. Weird. Did they get just utterly give up on curses? This would be a perfect curse. But anyway, that they can't gain life, and if they're dealt damage, they lose half their life. So it turns all your creatures into Virtus, essentially. Then you got Rush of the Dread. It basically can make someone lose half their life and then make them discard half their hand and sacrifice creatures. So it kind of does what Fraying Omnipotence does, but with what is it, Spree, which is the ability. Are you sick of me saying lose half their life? I'm sick of saying it. I probably have said it 100 times today, and I hate it. Actually, I really love this deck. I just hate saying it. Okay, so you got Archfiend of Despair and Bloodletting of Aclazotz. You're making your opponent lose half their life. So if you can double that, and double of half is whole, assuming now some Half-Life rounds up and rounds down. That's what you got to pay attention to that. But it can essentially one-shot an opponent, if not leave them like mortally wounded. Archfiend of Despair is a 6 generic, 2 black demon flying. Your opponent can't gain life, and at the beginning of each instep, each opponent loses life equal to the life lost that turn. So it's not even damage you do; it's damage any life lost they got. Then Bloodletter of Aclazotz is a 1 generic, 3 black vampire demon flying. If an opponent would lose life during your turn, they lose twice that much life instead. So this is obviously only during your turn, but still. Now, some more life loss doublers. Wound Reflection, which is the OG, is a 5 generic, 1 black enchantment. At the end of each turn, each opponent loses life equal to the life they've lost this turn. Then Blitzwing does something similar, but if no one loses life, you actually transform it, and it's a 6/5. 2 type of cards you kind of want to focus in this deck are lore effects and then unblockable effects. Lore effects just means it so you want yourself to be blocked. And how's that benefit you? Well, if everyone's blocking one creature, they can't block your death touch creatures that half life. So you put it on something and then attack with your commander plus that something and bing bada boom. Or you could just make your commander unblockable with something like Whisper Soul Cloak. Gives them unblockable and Shroud. And it seems like every couple years we get a new ability in a land that makes things unblockable. You got Rogue's Passage. For 4 mana, you can make anything unblockable. You got Escape Tunnel that targets creatures with power 2 or less. They can't be blocked. Then you got Access Tunnel. It's 3 generic tap it. Target creature with power 3 or less can't be blocked this turn. And of course, Virtus is a 1 powered creature, so bing bada boom. And just because we're not focusing 100% on our commander doesn't mean we don't want to protect it. Stuff like Guardian Augmenter, it's a 2 generic, 1 green troll wizard. As Flash, commander creatures you control get +2/+2, and then commanders you control have hexproof. So obviously, a lot of your protection, if you can get it, should be in creature form because then you can use those creatures for like lore effects. Then you got stuff like Collective Resistance. It's a 1 generic, 1 green instant as Escalate Green. You choose one or more. Destroy an artifact, destroy an enchantment, or target creature gains hexproof and indestructible into turn. Now, green and black have a lot of abilities just like that. You can also do like bring back effects where if it dies, it comes back with some kind of effect like a wicked roll counter or a +1/+1 counter. So those abilities are perfect for this deck. About half the mana ramp in this deck I actually put in the form of creatures, specifically Death Touch creatures. Poison Dart Frog, Nightshade Dryad, Leyline Prowler, and Deathcap Cultivator can all have Death Touch, except for Death Touch Cultivator has a Delirium ability where that's how it gets Death Touch. And Poison Dart Frog, you actually have to pay mana to give it Death Touch. But you also want a lot of creatures just so you can equip them with something like Quintus Spike. So if it does damage, it will make someone lose half the life. So just remember that. Keep that in mind. If you've seen any of my previous videos, you know I'm all about manipulating the rules to our advantage. And of course, I mean legally, not actually cheating, just knowing the rules and benefiting from them. And one thing I've thought about for this deck is I might add like boosters that also give trample, something like Raincore that gives +2/+0 in trample. And that's because trample and death touch actually have interesting interactions. So, when a creature with death touch and trample is blocked, it first assigns lethal damage to the creature, then assigns excess damage to an opponent or planeswalker. Since they have death touch, lethal damage for your creatures will be 1, and then the rest will go to your opponent's life. Even if the blocking creature has indestructible, you can still only assign 1 damage to them, and that will be considered lethal damage, and then the rest just goes over. However, they won't be destroyed because indestructible ignores state-based actions checking for lethal damage. And remember, if it rarely comes up, but sometimes it does. Trample is a May ability, so you don't have to assign it, but you know everyone always does because it's usually 99% of the time beneficial. And that's essentially the deck. You play as many half life stuff as you can. You make your opponent's life go down quickly. You play some death touch things, some lure effects, some unblockable effects, some protection, and you just have fun with it. It's such a fun deck. I always love playing it. It always draws attention, though, so you got to keep that in mind. People are not going to like losing half their life in one attack. I remember one game I played a Swamp, then Dark Rachel into Virtus. So turn one, I had them. So turn two, people started losing half their life. It's brutal. It could get brutal, but it's still a fun and pretty janky deck. This next deck is called Clockwork Works, and it's based around the Clockwork kind of theme. I'll get into that here in a second. As the commander, the fifth Doctor in Yasmin Khan. Now, this is actually my second deck that has Yasmin Khan as like a secondary commander. She just makes great card value. Really, I'm focusing on the fifth Doctor's ability. The fifth Doctor, who I'm focusing on the most, is a 2 generic, 1 white, 1 blue legendary creature, Time Lord Doctor. At the beginning of your end step, put a +1/+1 counter on each creature you control that didn't attack or enter the battlefield this turn. Untap those creatures. And then Yasmin Khan. As a tap ability, you exile a top card of your library until your next in step. You may play it with Doctor's Companion. Now, we're going to be focusing a lot on the tap untap style theme here, and it's going to be based around the clockwork mechanic. And I actually experimented with like 10 different color combinations with this deck. So it's something I've built and that I've loved, first of all. And second of all, it is way more powerful than I expected. You just sit there and grow in strength and no one can stop you, and you just swing in for huge creatures. And just a great example of why I started this channel is for just my personal fun. I learned that clockwork creatures, and I'll get into a few of them that are in this deck in a second, have lore. I did not know that. So, clockwork creatures are usually imitations of organic life forms and need to be repeatedly wound up. Clockwork avians were airborne machines of war created during the Brothers' War. Urza created flocks of the small clockwork birds to combat Mishra's dragon engines. They would actually tear apart the dragon engines piece by piece because they were so small they could get into the crevices. Now, there's actually an island of clockwork gnomes on an island called Steel Island. It's on Olgrotha. If you remember Olgrotha, it's where Singir Vampire was sent. So I just found that interesting. Back when I was a little teenage laboratory maniac, I had this thing called a dual deck. Now they came up with a bunch of I actually kind of missed the idea. It's a dual deck. It's 60 card decks that come in a pack. I think they may have similar products. They just call it something different now. There was one called Tezzeret versus Elspeth. Elspeth being my favorite planeswalker ever. I actually got it and it had a Clockwork Hydra in it. Now, Clockwork Hydra, I just fell in love with this concept. It's a 5 generic artifact creature Hydra. It comes into play with 4+1/+1 counters on it. If it attacks or blocks, you remove a +1/+1 counter on it. If you do, it deals 1 damage to target creature or player. Then you can tap it, put a +1/+1 counter on Clockwork Hydra. Okay, so what is the idea of this deck? It's that. So, and it's so flavorful too. So it comes in with a certain amount of windups or +1/+1 counters. And then if it moves to attack or block, it loses one of those windups. But you can wind it up more by tapping it. So it's a lot. It's an artifact theme, a tapping theme, and a +1/+1 counter theme, and that's what we're going with. There's other clockwork cards like Clockwork, Vorak. It's a 5 generic artifact creature beast. As trample, when it comes into play, it comes into play with 4+1/+1 counters on it. And then when it attacks or blocks, you remove a counter, and then you can tap it to add a +1/+1 counter. So pretty similar abilities. A lot of them do that exact thing. One way you can go with this deck is to focus heavily on a specific tribe. Now, there are a lot of constructs in this tribe, and I also put a lot of artificers just because I thought that'd be thematic. You know, you got your artificers, they do things with the artifacts, and your artifacts are mostly constructs. Not all of them, of course, but some of them. You got Scrapyard Recombiner, which is one of the only construct tribal cards out there. It's a 3 generic artifact creature construct as modular 2. Then you can tap it, sacrifice an artifact, search your library for a construct card, reveal it, and put it in your hand. Then shuffle your library, and it's a 0/0. 9 out of 10 times you want to get Steel Overseer. It's an amazing clockwork style card. It's not actually a clockwork card, obviously, because they all have clockwork in the title. But so Steel Overseer is 2 generic artifact creature construct. You can tap it at a +1/+1 counter to each artifact you control, and it's a 1/1. So basically, it winds up all your clockwork artifacts, which is perfect. Sticking with the constructs getting +1/+1 counter theme, Sun Crusher is a card I actually have never seen in a game outside of me playing it. It's a 9 generic, which is probably why it's not played a lot. It's 9 generic. It's an artifact creature. It is a construct, even though this I think was from Dark Steel. It is considered a construct. They just didn't have the creature type on there. It has Sunburst, which is an interesting ability. It says this comes into play with a +1/+1 counter on it for each color of mana used to pay its cost. So in our deck, we can get even more mana because we got like Exotic Orchard. We have stuff that helps us produce mana of colors that we don't have. So you can easily get 5 counters on it, making it an 8/8. You can pay 4 generic, tap it, remove a +1/+1 counter from Sun Crusher, destroy target creature. Then you can pay 2 generic, remove a +1/+1 counter from Sun Crusher, return Sun Crusher to its owner's hand. So essentially, this is a removal on a stick, and it's going to have a lot of counters on it thanks to our commander and other effects. So we'll be destroying things left and right, untapping it, destroying things. So that's perfect. And then one card I got to throw in the deck. I don't actually own this card yet. However, it's Lux Artillery. It's a 4 generic artifact. Whenever you cast an artifact creature spell, it gains Sunburst. So that's perfect for our deck. We have a lot of artifact creature spells. At the beginning of your end step, if there are 30 or more counters among artifacts and creatures you control, Lux Artillery does 10 damage to each opponent. This is a win con. We don't even need to do anything. We just need to get our things large, and then Lux Artillery in 4 turns will just destroy all your opponents, assuming they have 40 life. And like I said, it's just natural to have artificers in this deck. You could play a lot of tap and untap abilities. They don't all have artificer as the creature type. I just kind of preferred them in this deck just to keep the theme. You can obviously put just tap abilities in this deck and it would work perfect. You don't need this theme. I have Arkham Dagson. It's a 3 generic, 1 blue legendary creature, human artificer. As tap, target artifact creature's controller sacrifice it. Then that player searches their library for a non creature artifact card and puts it into play, and then shuffles his or her library, and it's a 2/2. So it tutors out something with the sacrifice of a creature. Perfect. Then Lita, Mechanical Engineer, is a 2 generic, 1 white legendary artifact creature, Artificer. Has vigilance. At the beginning of your end step, untap each other artifact creature you control. Perfect for this deck. Then 3 generic and a white, tap it. Create a 5/5 colorless vehicle artifact token named Zeppelin with flying and crew 3. And it's a 3/3. So it makes artifact. And crewing's easy because we're tapping and untapping everything. It works with our commander and this untapped stuff. And it's an artifact and an artificer. It's just a shoe in. A few more artificers. You got Droya, Ageless Innovator. It's a blue red legendary creature, human artificer. You can tap it, put 2 ingenuity counters on Droya. Then you may put an artifact card with mana value X or less from your hand onto the battlefield, where X is the number of counters on Droya. It's a 2/3. So it cheats something in the play, and so does Master Transmuter. It's a 3 generic, 1 blue artifact creature, human artificer. You pay a blue, tap it, return an artifact you control to its owner's hand. You may put an artifact card from your hand onto the battlefield. 1/2. So I use this kind of like a protection spell. If they target something for removal, you can just bounce it back. Or you can just cheat out your Sun Crusher, and Sun Crusher you can start putting counters on and destroying things. It's just however you want to roll with it. In case our commander just keeps getting removed, we do want some redundancy. So you got Thousand Year Elixir, it's a 3 generic artifact. You may activate abilities of creatures you control as though those creatures had haste. And you can pay a generic tap at untap target creature. So it untaps things just like your commander. So does a Virtue of Loyalty. This one's pretty similar to your commander. It's 3 generic, 2 white. It has an adventure side that says create a 2/2 white knight creature token with vigilance. And then it says at the beginning of your end step, put a +1/+1 counter on each creature you control and untap those. So it's doing the counter thing and doing the untap thing. It's perfect. Now, Illusionist Bracers doesn't untap anything, but it has a similar ability. The outcome's the same. It copies an activated ability that isn't a mana ability. So it's just like tapping and untapping. Then the Ozolith, perfect card in this deck. It's a legendary artifact. It's 1 mana. Whenever a creature you control leaves the battlefield, if it had counters on it, put those counters on the Ozolith. At the beginning of combat on your turn, if the Ozolith has counters on it, you may move all counters from it to target creature. So you're going to be making your creatures huge with +1/+1 counters, and board wipes do happen. So if they leave the battlefield, if they're destroyed or someone exiles them, all the counters will go to the Ozolith and you can reuse them. It's almost like recycling. And of course, we need to eat our vegetables, so we need the necessary parts of a commander deck. You got your mana ramp, which is easy in an artifact creature theme and an artificer theme. You got Vidalcan Engineer, it's a 1 generic, 1 blue Vidalcan Artificer. You can tap it, add 2 mana of any color, any one color to your mana pool. Spend this mana only to cast artifact spells or activate abilities of artifacts. It's a 1/1. Then you got Plague Mirror, which is I have all the mirrors in here, but not, well, not all of them. All the ones that tap for mana in these colors. But Plague Mirror is the best because it does tap for a generic mana, but it also has infect. So if this gets 9 counters on it, it one shots opponents. Every deck needs recursion. Now, here are two examples of just single target recursion, but you can play a lot of artifact recursion that's mass recursion because you need at least two mass recursion spells in every deck, in my opinion. But these ones target. So you got Goblin Engineer. It's a one generic, one red Goblin Artificer. When it enters the battlefield, you search your library for an artifact and put it in your graveyard, then shuffle. You can pay a red, sacrifice an artifact, and tap him. Return target artifact card from your graveyard with converted mana cost 3 or less to the battlefield. Then you got Goblin Welder. It's a one red Goblin Artificer. As tap, choose target artifact a player controls and target artifact card in a player's graveyard. If both targets are still legal and this ability resolves, that player simultaneously sacrifices the artifact and returns the artifact to the battlefield. And it's a 1/1. So they're just great recursion. I love, and they're artificers. It just fits the theme. So you got Quicksmith Spy and Padim, Council of Innovation. They are both artificers that help you draw. You remember, you need draw engines in your deck. So Quicksmith Spy is a 3 generic, 1 blue human artificer. When it enters the battlefield, target artifact gets the ability tap, draw a card for as long as you control Quicksmith Spy. And it's a 2/3. So it turns your Soul Ring or whatever you want into tap, draw a card. You can tap it, tap it, untap it, draw a bunch. You got Padim. It's a 3 generic, 1 blue legendary creature, Vidalcan Artificer. Artifacts you control have hexproof, which is great protection. And then at the beginning of your upkeep, if you control an artifact with the highest CMC or tied with the highest CMC, you draw a card. So it's card draw plus protection. Speaking of protection, it's very important in every deck. You got Ripples of Potential. It's a 1 generic, 1 blue instant. Proliferate. Then choose any number of permanents you control that have counters put on them this way. Those permanents phase out. It's amazing in this deck. It's amazing in a Planeswalker deck. It's amazing in so many decks. And then an all-star card I couldn't not include in this is Agatha's Soul Cauldron. It's a 2 generic legendary artifact. You may spend mana as though it were mana of any color to activate abilities of creatures you control. Creatures you control with +1/+1 counters on them have all activated abilities of all creature cards exiled with Agatha's Soul Cauldron. You can tap it, exile target card from a graveyard. When a creature card is exiled this way, put a +1/+1 counter on target creature you control. So all of our creatures will have abilities. So this is graveyard hate, which you need in your deck, but it's also will give your creatures abilities, making your clockwork creatures even stronger. And that's essentially the deck. You play constructs and artificers with tap and untap abilities. You can focus on clockwork. You don't have to. I did it because of a nostalgia reasons. But they do exactly what you want. They tap, untap, have +1/+1 abilities, and so on. If this deck is so powerful and so fun, you probably only need to attack during one battle phase or combat phase to just end the game. Like it just sits there for a while and then just hammers your opponent to death. And that's the end of the video. I love talking about decks, especially decks I own. I'm probably the same as you. You probably love talking about them too. If you have a deck you want to talk about or a deck you're working on you need help with, comment down below with a deck list or just an idea. I'd be more than happy to make a deck list for you or make like a YouTube short video explaining it. I've done that a few times and I love doing it. I do this as a hobby, like I said. I just do it for fun. So if you need any help with anything, comment down below about that. Also, if you like this video, consider subscribing. I come out with videos like this and lore-based videos. Usually those are like video essays about a specific set. I did an alpha video, an alpha, beta, unlimited set lore video. Check that out if you're interested. I also build decks during those videos. So it's not just straight up lore. I also build decks during them. So subscribe, like, comment, do anything you feel is right, and I'll see you in the next one.